Hi, my name is Nairi. I'm running an adoption support channel. I'm also doing an attachment series, and this is video number 5. I've done 4 other attachment videos. If you want to check them out on my playlist, please subscribe if you're interested in attachment or adoption. So today is attachment and boundary pushing. Now, for some of us, those boundary pushings have carried on for a very long time, and maybe will for the rest of our children's lives. So I've got 2 boys who are 11 and 12, so I kind of know all about boundary pushing. But we're now looking at attachment in relation to this. So when the child has started to feel quite settled with you, you're likely to have gone past the honeymoon period and start watching those boundaries being pushed. So you may have noticed that to begin with, the child seemed quite compliant and now they're not. So it could be that they are resisting absolutely everything that you ask them to do. Or it could be they're resisting certain things, or it could be happening at certain times of the day. So the first thing to do is to see if you can see a pattern, but there might not be. There may be no pattern at all. So don't be despondent if you can't see a pattern and it's just happening randomly. But you do need to kind of first of all rule out the normal reasons why children can kind of lose it a little bit. So just check out that the child's not overly tired, that you haven't had a massive change of routine, or you've introduced different people into the environment, or there's not something more obvious that might be kind of pushing them over the edge. But if it just appears to be that they want to push your buttons, that they want to see how much they can get away with, then the other thing you will notice, or the thing that you'll notice, they probably check back to see your reaction. They check back to see what you're going to do. This is very difficult for most adults because at that point they don't really know what to do. Now, some parenting styles will tell you to ignore the behaviour. Now, in my experience, and I'm just talking about my experience now, that does not work at all. It doesn't work in our family, and that is because my main boundary pusher is somebody who wants to know that I know he's there. So if that behaviour happens and I ignore it, he'll just escalate until I don't ignore it, and that's not a good place to be with an 11-year-old. So for me, the ignoring doesn't work. You can try it first. So the thing that I suggest you do to try next is call out the behaviour. So generally speaking, what I'll do is I'll actually say what the behaviour is and what I'm not happy about it quite clearly. And I think when you've got a young child, that's really important, that they understand why you don't want them to do something, because some children will boundary push but they don't really know why what they're doing is wrong anyway. So call out the behaviour. I think it sounds odd, but if you can distract them with a cuddle and say, come to mummy, come to daddy now, let's have a quick cuddle, stop what we're doing for a minute, then that would have broken that moment. And then you can offer another distraction if you have one at hand. So you give them something different to do. And if that works, that's really, really good, because you can probably keep breaking that moment quite a lot. And what you're offering them then is that physical closeness, which of course in turn is building the attachment. So that's a win-win all round if that works. If that doesn't work, which for your more kind of like, somebody's on a mission to do this, doesn't work, then you would need to be really clear about the consequences. If you keep throwing that toy, then the next thing I will do is I will need to take that toy away from you for today, or whatever you think is fair for them. So you say, if you keep doing this, and you need to call it out, then this is what will happen, and this is your first warning. So give them a first warning. They do it again and say, okay, so I've just said, if you keep doing this, this is what will happen to this toy. And then if they do it again, then you need to follow through. So I'll give them one warning, and then if they do it again, I would follow through. Now, this is where my husband and I find this really hard, because obviously the behaviours that we're dealing with an 11-year-old are much different than just throwing a toy. And kind of we give him quite a few warnings before we follow through, and that's because we know what will happen. We know that the house is going to be brought to its knees with screaming and shouting and throwing things, and kind of we don't want to follow through. But when they're younger, the quicker you can follow through, the more they get the message that actually they are getting your attention, but it's not going to actually give them what they want in the end. As I say, the cuddle and the brought closeness is the best way, but then if you have to call out the behaviour and say what the consequence is, you've got to follow through as quick as you possibly can, and both agree. I both agree on that. Now I'm going to interject with a bit of a funny story with our two boys, because I like you to know that we go through things, and then you can identify with me and my children, my husband. So we had one really cracker of an evening where our son was shouting, screaming, throwing things, just a lot really. I think we had to do a kind of like circle around the area in the car with him in the car to try and calm him down. I don't know how long that took because I can't remember it that clearly, but came home and just said, we were talking about the fact that he'd had a pretty good report home from school and nothing was really raised about behaviour there. There were other things, but behaviour wise he's doing pretty well, and said it's really interesting how you managed to kind of do that at school but you're not doing that at home, like we're seeing all these other things. And he sat and he thought about it. He went, yeah. He said, but that's because I know you'll never chuck me out. I was like, okay, so you feel pretty secure here. So I don't know whether he was inferring that if he did that at school he'd be chucked out but not at home, or whether he was just inferring he can just let rip at home because we're always going to be there for him. So it was really lovely because it just shows how strong that attachment is with us, but it just goes to show why sometimes the behaviours happen at home, because he knows he can just let it go. And sometimes, you know, when children's attachment starts to build really, really strongly, they will test out the relationship with you and they will feel free just to kind of go for it. And so it can feel a bit frightening when sometimes this child just changes beyond all recognition, but it is a part of the process that your child most likely will go through. Now, there is an exception to the rule. Some children are just challenging and difficult all the way through. That's what we have. But, you know, we're talking around attachment and the stages that children go through in attachment. If you've got a shouter, so somebody who doesn't necessarily do a lot but shouts a lot, you just say, I'm not going to answer you till you calm down. And if you can't even get that in, as in they won't listen to that, then you do go quiet until they realise you're not responding. And then you say, if you don't quieten down or you don't stop what you're doing, I'm not going to answer you, so that you can be heard. You can do everything that I've just suggested, but just go through a really bad time with the child, and it's not obvious to you why. You don't know why. Professionals might ask you lots of questions that make you feel that somehow it's your fault, it's to do with your parenting. But you know what? I'm here to tell you it may be none of those things. It might be that your child is being triggered by things that you don't know. It might be that they're just feeling happier with you and they just want to let rip, and nothing you're going to do is going to make a difference. You just have to go through that period of time. So don't be too hard on yourself. Now's the time to call in your respite. Now's the time to get a break. And you will particularly find that things might go downhill actually over holiday times or times when the routine is not the same. So it is what it is, and I don't want you to be too hard on yourself over it. So I hope that video number 5 has helped you. Check out the other 4 videos if you haven't already on the playlist for attachment, and I'll see you on my next video number 6 next week. Thank you for watching Adoption with Nairi.